So I want to go through these 10 areas. I've made a quick list on the basis of something that happened within my HR team that inspired me to create this video that I think is really important. So these are the 10 areas where if you're not reading or learning 6 hours, so think about it, 6 hours once, that's 30 minutes a day over 12 days. That's where you're learning intensively and taking notes. So maybe that ends up being a full 10 hours. So these 10 hours for these 10 areas, if you're any of these 10, will change your life. And there's probably even more areas further than that. So if you're any one of these 10 and you're not learning how to sell, how to persuade, and therefore effectively communicate, you are missing out. And what I want to do is go through these 10 buckets and briefly talk about examples of why and where you be selling in those spaces to underline ultimately it's huge importance to your life and to your career. So number one, if you're in HR, you're going to be potentially interviewing candidates. And if you're interviewing candidates, you want to communicate why the company that you're at, why if you're at Pearl Lemon, why it's worth being here, why you're here, what you love about the company. So persuasion is a big part of it. If you're doing employee feedback and performance reviews, you need to communicate why they should continue at Pearl Lemon if they're not yet getting the promotions that they want. You need to communicate why it's still worth staying in spite of the performance feedback that they've got. So there's so many areas in which you'll be communicating persuasion if you're in HR. So that's one bucket. Bucket number two, accounting. If you're in accounting, you want to communicate the value of the financial analysis that you've done, the performance forecasting, the reconciliations that you've done, the salary payments that you've made. You want to communicate why and effectively help people understand why a payment might be a little bit late, why you're going to make it a little bit early, why ultimately there's issues with the budget that we've got in place. If you're not thinking about any of those things in accounting, by the way, then you might want to relook at the scope of your role and work outside of your role. But that's what you want to be able to communicate in accounting. If you're in fulfillment and delivery, you need to be able to communicate the effort that you're putting in absence of the role, or in absence of the result. You need to communicate why, even if the result isn't there, you're confident the result will come. You need to communicate and explain the technical parts of the delivery, the complex parts of the operations, why things might take longer than someone wants, how you can deliver it quicker, a plan of attack. So in fulfillment and delivery, you need to communicate persuasively all of these things, okay? Bucket number four, management teams. It probably goes without saying. You need to inspire your team. You need to direct your team. You need to manage your team. You need to teach your team. So therefore, you need to sell and persuade them on all of these areas. Otherwise, you're not going to get people performing up to the level of their ability, but absolutely actually falling further and further short of it. So that's management teams, bucket number four. Bucket number five, if you're in marketing, then you need to be able to communicate the value of directionally changing the strategy, the value of sticking with a strategy even whilst the result is not coming, the value of tweaking something that haven't been previously tweaked, the value of any change, any improvement, any acceleration to the framework deserves an explanation. You need to convince and communicate and persuade. If you're in sales, it goes without selling, it goes without selling, it goes without saying. So whilst that's of course the job description, I will move on to the next space. So these are one, two, three, four, five, one, HR, accounting, fulfillment, delivery, management, marketing, sales, six, in fact. I will also underline the fact that all of these roles contain, if you're in ultimately any form of employment, even if it's, for example, with your clients, because you can sell them up and sell otherwise. The other space that you need to consider is how you're going to increase your budgets, increase your salaries, increase the length of your retainer. So all of these areas do involve selling. So let's go into the personal space. If you've not yet considered the other buckets and you think that, well, none of these buckets apply to me. What about if you're a parent? You have to convince your children to stay at the dinner table, to eat all of their food, why you won't give them the additional pocket money, why they do have to go out and get a job, why they need to study hard, why they need to not be naughty, why they need to be nice, why they need to not make a scene. All of these elements involve different aspects of persuasion. If you're a child, you need to communicate why you deserve that extra pocket money, why you should be let out later, how responsible you are, why you should skip this practice, why you should engage in this practice with the associated cost. If you're a child, you're going to be needing to do all of these things with your parents. If you're a friend, why we're going to go on this holiday, why we should meet a little bit later, why watch this movie, why meet at this bar, why come to mine instead of go to yours, why not take this trip even in spite of you wanting to do the other one. So if you're a friend, you're going to be in all of these spaces. If you're a husband or if you're a wife, you need to communicate. Why this restaurant? Why that gift? Why not that holiday? Why this holiday? Why see the in-laws? Why not see the in-laws? So it goes up and it continues. And what I'm trying to communicate is that there's no area of your life really where you're not involved in the process of selling. And if you don't get cognizant and don't put in the 10 hours for these 10 spaces, okay, that's 6 hours of reading, which is divvied up into 30-minute segments plus 15 minutes to take on the information. So we're looking at 45 minutes over 12 days. Read the books, watch the videos, put the ultimately training into practice, and you'll be so shocked with the type of returns that you can get from this practice, because not enough people are learning sales, and sales is actually effective communication. And how sad would it be if you're unable to communicate something that would be for the benefit of someone who really needed that, but they weren't yet ready to hear the message. And sometimes people are not ready. So when you're leading with value, when there's something you want to communicate that you truly think that is worth it, it is your job to become a more effective salesperson, to be able to communicate the value for that thing, for that decision that could change that person's life. So learn to sell whatever place in the world and whatever role that you occupy.